Hey there, MJ traders and investors. It's Rod with Pow Group. Welcome back on The Pursuit of Wealth, your home for MJ stocks, crypto assets, news, and interviews. Also home to the best MJ community. Today is Wednesday, it's June 12th. Hope you're doing well and happy hump day. In this video, we're going to be discussing a controversial topic. There seems to be a lot of tribalism, cult-like mentality ever since I made that post about which companies are going to reach blue chip status in the MJ space. I talked about Grok AI from X, formerly Twitter, and then I talked about Chat GPT, and then I gave my own list. And it wasn't me trying to spark to ruffle any kind of feathers or anything like that. It was just me going through a thought exercise, and it's just like big tech. It's just like electric vehicles. It's just like I said, tech companies, right? There's not going to be one to rule them all. If you look, Apple just took the number one position as the world's most valuable company again today, and they've been kind of sharing it with Microsoft and then Nvidia, and then all of a sudden Amazon will come out of nowhere, and then Tesla. They all seem to be in the mix. But if you look at Apple, you look at Amazon, you look at Microsoft, there's not going to be one winner in the tech industry, right? There can be multiple. There's enough room for them all to succeed. And actually, Apple almost went bankrupt if not for Microsoft investing 150 million, and that was in 1997, and they weren't selling Schedule 1 illegal drugs, right? So I think we need to drop the tribalism. And in this video, I'm going to be discussing, is High Tide better than, say, a licensed producer in Canada, and what are the advantages and disadvantages? They're very different businesses, right? And the biggest thing is excise tax. That's something that High Tide doesn't have to pay because it's not a licensed producer or LP. So we're going to discuss all of this and more. I got a lot that I want to go to, and I jotted down some notes. But before we get to it, make sure to smash the like. It helps support me in the channel. And if you're new, you can subscribe, tick the bell, all that good stuff. You'll be notified on any future videos or when I go live. As always, this is not financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only, and I'm not a financial advisor. You should never buy or sell anything based on anything I say or write. Also, you can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter. The handle for that is @GroupPow. Going to be using that as my platform of choice going forward. And just in case we ever get censored or removed from YouTube, censorship is a real thing these days. You can follow us over there. We're also on Rumble as well. And just as a reminder, High Tide is set to announce second quarter fiscal 2024 financial results tomorrow after market close, and then there'll be a conference call on Friday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I did an earnings prep video as well. You can check that out if you haven't already seen it. And I'm working on getting an interview with Raj Grover, the CEO of High Tide as well. We're going to see what we can do after earnings. I've been waiting to speak to the communications team, so we'll see what happens here after earnings. But this is the post that I made yesterday, and it ruffled some feathers. Obviously, people are like, oh, why do you have Tilray at the top? And why isn't High Tide at the top? And, I see it's very reminiscent of crypto. I see a lot of tribalism. I see a lot of cult-like mentality. There can be more than one winner, right? And in a lot of cases, they're going to all help each other, right? Like a rising high tide lifts all boats. So, and I made a post in the Pow Group private community today, and I said, one thing to keep in mind is that excise taxes only apply to licensed producers in Canada. So a name like High Tide doesn't have to worry about 1/3 of their revenue. So Organogram, Oxley, if you listen to Tilray CEO Irwin Simon, about 1/3 of their entire revenue goes to excise taxes, okay? Just on MJ. And then, they pay other taxes as well, but that's just on excise tax alone, right? And the same thing with tobacco and alcohol. There's excise tax on that. But I'm seeing a lot of people comparing High Tide to Tilray or High Tide to Canopy, and there's a very big difference, right? You're not comparing apples to oranges. High Tide is a retailer, not a producer. They need producers to run their business, right? So High Tide said they may be open to becoming a producer in the future, but one thing they might be waiting for, I said, is they could be waiting for lower excise taxes before they jump into the producing space. But maybe, by then, a lot of these producers would have a huge head start. And also, if there's improvements to excise taxes, that means the premium would go up to buy one of these companies or to buy a company with a license, right, or a producer. So you have to factor that in as well. And I'm seeing a lot of people saying, High Tide is the best MJ company. Well, first, we have to define we have to define MJ company, okay? So are we talking about producers? Are we talking about retailers? Are we talking about REITs like real estate investment trusts? Think of IPR. Are we thinking picks and shovels? Are we thinking, something like a GRWG where they sell home grow stuff? They're retail, but they're selling kind of like home grow stuff. Like if you go into High Tide or Canna Cabana, they sell paraphernalia and smoking devices, right? But they don't sell like grow tents and things like that, or grow lights, right? So you have to think, are you getting into the home grow business and retail in that segment? Are you getting into retailers? Are you getting into licensed producers? Are you getting into multi-state operators in the US? Are you getting into REITs, right? Picks and shovels. So all of these things, really you have to define what is an MJ company. And I don't think just owning one is very wise, right? We want to be diversified. You don't want to be over diversified. You don't want to own just, one MJ stock, in my opinion. I think you should own, I think a sweet spot for most people, and again, not telling you to buy, sell, or hold or what to do, is my own thoughts and opinions, but I think a sweet spot somewhere around that 6 to 12 company mark, right? And then be diversified, outside of Canada, right? Not just the Canadian producers, but the US producers, and then some retailers in the US and Canada, and maybe some ETFs, right? And then maybe a REIT or something like that. So you can be diversified. And then you can be diversified outside of the MJ industry, right? I hold more crypto dollar-wise than I do MJ, right? And that's because crypto's in a bull market and MJ's in a bear market. And I'm going to be looking to rotate those profits. I also have a very large real estate investment portfolio, right? I have 5 properties. I have a bunch of cash on the sidelines in case I need to buy the dip on other industries, right? And then I have a bunch of other investments as well. So you need to factor that in. And again, they complement each other, right? So again, if we just go to, and just let me finish that train of thought before I jump into this here. But, is High Tide the best retailer? Well, one could say probably yes. Is it the best producer? No, that doesn't even make sense because, it's not a producer. It's a retailer, right? That's why I say when you're comparing High Tide to a Tilray or a Canopy, it's kind of silly. It doesn't even really make sense, right? You're comparing apples to oranges. So if you go here and you search excise tax on High Tide, there ain't none because it's not a producer. You go to Tilray and you search excise tax, and they're paying a lot of money, tens of millions of dollars in just MJ excise taxes. Then you go to beverage alcohol excise taxes. Again, more millions of dollars being spent on alcohol excise taxes, right? And then a name like SNDL, well, they have, they're a producer and they're a retailer both in alcohol and MJ. So, and I'm not going to compare every single, I know, I didn't compare Canopy, I mentioned that, but, Canopy's paying tens of millions of dollars in excise taxes as well. So excise tax here, you can see SNDL is a producer as well, so it pays excise taxes, but High Tide doesn't pay any excise tax. And if a third of its revenue, right, if we just bring up the High Tide chart here real quick for rough, easy math, if we're expecting here 92.542 million USD, well, you can expect about 30 million of that would go to excise taxes. So that means the revenue would be about 30 million lower, right? Which, that we know that would be a big hit, but that doesn't make any sense because it's not a retailer, so it wouldn't have any excise taxes. But that would be a big difference, right? So again, High Tide could potentially become a producer in the future, but a lot remains to be seen. And like I said, just kind of comparing the two is kind of silly. I don't think, if you've seen my MJ Portfolio 2024 update, I own a lot of different producers and I own a lot of different retailers. I own producers in Canada, US. So you can check out that video. I even give my percentage holdings of each one in my portfolio. But, we have to kind of just drop that tribalistic nature. And, these companies, if like, for example, if you go into a High Tide location like a Canna Cabana and you look at the products that they have in there, pretty much predominantly Tilray now. So if, High Tide, if Tilray were to go away and people say Tilray is a terrible company, it's not sustainable. Well, if Tilray went away, I probably wouldn't really shop at High Tide, right? Like, because I 90% of the products that I buy from there are Tilray, right? So it's a win-win. They complement each other. And, it's not good for, if excise taxes go down, that's better for High Tide because it's going to combat the illicit market, right? We're going to see these producers, they work hand in hand together, right? Like I said, a rising high tide lifts all boats. So you have to factor that in as well. And then if the excise taxes were lower, the products would be even more cheaper. And, these licensed producers could have more on the bottom line, more profit margin, more profit in general. They'd be able to combat more of the illicit market, bring that over, right? So you have to really think about it from a longer term perspective. And, a lot of these producers are probably going to see the most cash flow, in my opinion, long term, right? Because they're going to have, they're the ones producing it, right? So there's going to be so much, markup from like, other categories as well, like beverages. I think that's going to be once we start to see scale. But don't rule out the fact that High Tide could potentially become a producer as well. But like I said, the more that time goes on, the more these other producers and companies are going to have had a head start, or they're going to have to pay a premium if excise taxes does improve, and that's kind of what they're waiting for. Well, they're going to probably have to pay a premium and an inflated value for that company that they're looking to acquire because the landscape has changed, right? So curious to hear what everybody thinks about this in the comment section below. But I challenge people to just not just throw around words for the sake of throwing around words. I know that people have been burned. They invested money and they were down 90%, 80%, and then they hop off that bandwagon and they hop on the next one. And now they're a high tide investor, and they're the fundamentals are great with high tide, but you have to realize what we're actually comparing here. And there's two very different models, right? And two very different types of businesses, right? One's a retailer and a lot of these are producers. So just keep that in mind. And, at the end of the day, we have to drop the tribalistic nature. We have to drop that cult-like mentality. There's going to be multiple winners, and there's no need to fixate on the companies that you don't like, right? If you don't like them, just don't invest, don't talk about them. I don't see why so many people have to go online and bash these companies and talk to other people out of their investments. Who cares? Just focus. Life's short. Focus on what you want to focus on and the positive. Why focus on the negative? So anyway, I digress. That's my rant for the day, but let me know your thoughts and opinions on this in the comment section below. Excited to see High Tide's earnings though. Nonetheless, tomorrow after market close, I'll be doing an earnings coverage video on that as well. But if you haven't seen my earnings prep, check that out. I think you'd really benefit from it. But going down it there, it's Rod with Pow Group. Thanks again for joining us in the pursuit of wealth, and we'll continue the conversation in the comment section below. All right, have a great day, and we'll see you again on the next video.